to interrupt you. I hate to interrupt you. This lively discourse that you guys are having. Perhaps we can continue it at another time. Let's see what we're doing here. First of all, let me welcome everyone here to this Zoom meeting, the Quran Study Group. That's what the QSG stands for. I'm sure most of you know by now. My name is Hamza Abdul Malik. I'm not the head of this group or anything. I just happen to be here. My picture is in the background just by chance. I didn't design it that way. It looks kind of nice, so we'll leave it for now. Again, today is January 8th, 2023. I mistakenly put, when I sent out the notice for this meeting, December 8th. So I'm sure when I said second meeting, I'm sure that those of you who saw the first meeting a couple of weeks ago put two and two together and assumed that I made a typo there. So that's what that was. The concept of this group is based on the phrase, only the truth matters. Only the truth matters. That happens to be my YouTube channel. Hopefully you guys can go over there and subscribe to it and view the content, hit like and share, whatever you like to do with that. We appreciate that. Only the truth matters. That's based on the Quran, chapter 22, verse 6, where Allah says, that is because Allah, He is al-Haq, He is the truth. Only the truth saves. Only the truth saves, and that's sort of to Asr, the 103rd surah, speaks about by the time Allah takes an oath on time that mankind is lost, and with the exception of those people who trust in Allah and do good deeds and exhort one another to al-Haq and as-sabr, to patience, consistency, and so forth. Also, based on the concept that Muhammad, mentioned by name, this individual by name or identity or whatever that word Muhammad indicates, Muhammad, chapter 47, verse 2, that which is given to Muhammad, that is al-Haq, that is the truth. Also, 10:35, Quran chapter 10, verse 35, is there any of your associate gods who guide to the truth? Say, Allah guides to the truth. Is he who guides to the truth more worthy to be followed, or him who knows not the way unless he is guided? So there we see that Allah is also 25:31 sufficient as a guide. And after that, chapter 10, verse 32, what is there after al-Haq, after the truth, except the law, straying, or 22:62, batil? So again, the specific idea of this forum, the Quran Study Group, that's my YouTube channel based on this, what I just gave you that information there. This particular segment of our Quran Study Group is based on chapter 39, verse 33, where it speaks about those who bring or come with truthful speech and those who accept truthful speech. These are the muttaqun, the people of uprightness, the people of right conduct, the people who are trustworthy, whatever. So now we want to speak also, and I'll end with this one, that we want to talk about bringing our evidence from the source of the Quran, Kitab Allah. Allah says, get thee out of here, chapter 2, verse 38. Hudan will come to you, and that Hudan came in the form of Al-Quran, chapter 2, verse 185. So we want to speak beyond a reasonable doubt or a reason to doubt. We want to have our arguments and what we present here regarding Allah. Regarding Allah, we're not here to talk about politics or economics or whatever, even though that might somehow or another work its way into some Quranic verses. If it does, that just happens to be that case. We're talking about how to obtain our salvation through what we call salvation through following the guidance of Allah. So we want to have our arguments and our statements based on truthful speech, and we want that truthful speech to be argued beyond a reasonable doubt or a reason to doubt. Having said that, I want to inform you again that we're thankful to have our good brother, and he doesn't like me to call him doctor, so I'm not going to call him personally as doctor. I'll call him my brother, but for the sake of this introduction, I will use the term doctor, and then I'll drop it after that. Our good brother, Dr. Omar Ramahi, I hope I'm saying that right. He has agreed to come on with us today, and he has agreed to speak with us regarding the topic, does Allah know the future based on the Mus'haf? Allah's ilm. Does Allah know the future based on the Mus'haf? So without any further ado, I think he's waiting in the wing. We don't want to keep him waiting any further. So Brother Omar, if you're there, Salamun Alaykum, and welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam, Brother Hamza, and greetings and salam to everyone.
Salam, Omar. Nice to see you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Thank you so much. Same here. Brother Hamza, you're asking for a lot, when you said that without any doubt. I think that I talk about myself is that if I had any strength in my life, it's not because I did something right. I think because I always leave room that I may be wrong.
Exactly, I agree.
And alhamdulillah, that had keep me, grounded. And again, going back to what you said, grounded in reality. When you asked me to present a topic or subject, I always like to challenge myself. I'm not a preacher. I don't like that phrase. And nor am I. What should I say? Giver of something. I like to facilitate. I hope I can facilitate some kind of a thinking, and that's again back to my profession as an educator. I like to make people think, and I like to think with them and reflect on what I say. So let's hope that we entangle something that, in my opinion, or we discuss something, or we decipher something that extremely important in understanding our existence, understanding our reality, understanding our God. I think this is very important, because Allah wants us to understand Him. I don't think that we're born to understand Allah and the universe. So how do we understand Allah? I think the only way to understand Him through the text that He revealed to us. That's the only, at least the beginning, So I want to say something that motivated me about this subject, Allah's ilm. It's a big undertaking. When I wanted to discuss this, and I've been thinking about this subject for the past 7 years, when I noticed that there's a difference between ilm and ma'rifah. Ilm and ma'rifah. This is loosely translated ilm, science, for now, and ma'rifah is knowledge. Okay, so being in the field of academics and education, this had always, been in my mind. I tell the students, for instance, why do you want professors to teach you? I mean, you can go to YouTube, you can go to the internet and get that knowledge. So I asked him, am I a facilitator of something else, or am I just giving you knowledge? And smart students pause. They really pause. I say, why should the university pay us money where instead of you going to the internet and get the information? So that had been in my mind. And now, what made things more exciting for me when the issue of the future comes into play, and in particular, Allah's knowledge or Allah's ilm. Again, we may shed light on this subject, and we may not. But the comforting thing, I assure all of you, what's comforting is that we should be grounded in reality. That's the comforting. That's what comforts me. Sometimes I look at certain phrases, verses in the Mus'haf, and I want to be honest with you, I get extremely confused. Okay? So that's natural. That's natural. I look at a book of chemistry, I get 50 million times more confused than looking at the Mus'haf. Okay? Yet some people know how to look at that book carefully in a methodical way. So this is reassuring. And I think that it has to be said that we're going through this, I speak of myself, of somewhat of a confusing period because the Mus'haf had been neglected for many, 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 many years. That's my summary. Now, in my field, Allah keeps telling us in the Mus'haf, look around you. تدبرون, يعقلون, يتفكرون. Okay? So all of it, in my opinion, all of these commands or encouragements, they're leading towards, they're like vectoring one thing, and that is ilm. That is ilm, not knowledge. That is towards ilm. In other words, يعقلون is not an end by itself. يتدبرون is not an end by itself. يتفكرون is not an end by itself. The يتفكر, يعقل, يتدبر is a process. It's a process. It's not an end by itself. The ilm is an end by itself. So there's a difference. Iqra. If we look at, for instance, and I'll get to it in a second, the word Iqra. We discuss a lot what this means. Okay, Iqra, i'lam, atlu. They're different. They're really different. I mean, there's distinct difference between them, and I think we should, starting with myself, detox maybe is the right word. Detox our brain from what man has created in terms of language to understand the Mus'haf versus what the language that Allah is using to help us understand reality. The Mus'haf is not an end by itself. Reality is the end by itself. So if we look, for instance, if when we notice that Allah stresses ilm, look, just put the word ilm, alima, in any of those databases, and I think 700 and something derivatives appear. Put arifa, I think less than 50 or 40 appear, or even less. So now, in this is not a trivial topic. It's not at all. In fact, in the West, people debate what is knowledge versus what is science. And I tried to understand what Muslims have said about this, and I'm sad to say that it's extremely shallow, extremely, at least from what I've been able to put my hand on, very, very shallow. Now, if we look at, and I will come to the Mus'haf, okay? I will come to the Mus'haf in a second, because I am not going to use references to define what the ilm is other than the Mus'haf. This is my approach. Science, there's a big debate what science is. There's a big debate. Don't be surprised if I say that. There's a big debate. If I tell you you're a chemist, this means one thing versus you're a scientist in chemistry. There's a difference. If I tell you H, two H's plus one O will give me water. Now you have knowledge of that. Versus you are a scientist in chemistry. Big difference, big difference. The electrician in Canada, where I live, the electricians make a lot of money, a lot of money. You know, just one electrician came to my house, 8 hours, he charged me $2,000. Okay. Now, does that electrician have the ilm of electrical engineering? No, he doesn't. Okay. Huge difference. I am not certified to do the wiring of the house, but I have the ilm of electrical engineering. So big difference, big difference. Now, if we look at nature, again, going back to Brother Hamza said, reality, we want to understand reality. If we look at nature, nature is described by certain equations. There's no escape, whether you're in China or in Tanzania or anywhere. Nature is described by certain equations. These equations, they refer to them, we don't have to refer them that way, but they refer to them as differential equations. Don't think I'm trying to confuse you or trying to be elitist, but please bear with me. These differential equations, okay, describe nature, period. Okay, you cannot describe nature in any other way. Now, what is interesting about these differential equations is that the number E, the golden or the magical number, appears. No one can explain it. Why? It is something natural. Number one, the equations, there's no way to describe reality aside from these equations, even human behavior, okay? The second is the so-called natural number E appears, okay? There are natural things in this world, okay? Now, the differential equation that describes reality is a prediction of what will happen. Is a prediction. If we remember, for those of us who are interested in physics and math and the Greeks, they wanted to know way back when they fire a cannon onto Alexandria, that the cannon will hit the target. Okay. In those days, the math and the knowledge and the science was limited, was very limited. So they were lucky if it falls within maybe 300-meter radius. Nowadays, in the last war, in the last bombardment by the Israelis of Gaza, they could use mortars. These are supposedly not very accurate. Mortars and tanks to fire at a window very, very precisely. Okay, so what has happened since the Greeks were not able to do this, and now we input a lot of information into the system. We know the weather, we know the temperature, we know the humidity. All of these are inputted into the system. Look at another example. How many aircrafts fly every day? How many landings? How many takeoffs? No crashes anymore, practically null, because we have more ilm. We have more ilm, more understanding of the physics that is around us. Physics, nothing but physics. It's all physics, okay? Reality is nothing but physics. So now, if and this is something I wanted to conclude this, but I will start motivating the subject with, if I know all the equations that govern thermodynamics, electromechanics, electrodynamics, mechanics, you name it, I can predict that the cannon, the trajectory will fall where I want it. I have a better prediction. Okay, the more knowledge and the more data, the more parameters, the more physics, the more science I know, the better my prediction will be. Another very quick example, the weather. 20 years ago, we were lucky to predict the weather. Now we have amazing prediction. It's not perfect, but we have amazing prediction that if you plot the real temperature versus the predicted temperature over a certain day, most of the time you get amazing correlation. So are we gods? We are getting closer to Allah. And getting closer to Allah is not getting closer to his knees or his chest or to a proximity. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as getting closer to him in a proximity fashion. But we're getting closer to his ilm, alim. You see, alim, that's the goal. Alim could be translated as, and again, some people did have that in some of the lexicons, is the culminations of alim. Alim plus alim plus alim plus alim. The infinite series will give you the alim, someone who knows all the laws of the universe. Now, this is the motivational thing that I wanted to start with. Now, let's look, instead of looking at I'm not going to dismiss, by the way, what others have said. What others have said is fine, but let's see what the Mus'haf is trying to tell us and see if we can come up with something out of it. If we look at Surah 96, okay? اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. This is I think this surah summarizes the theory of knowledge, in my opinion, and I want to give credit for the one who made me think that way is, of course, Muhammad Shahrur. Now, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. Allah didn't say اعلم, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. Typically, this is translated, read in the name of your Rabb, whether Rabb is Lord or Sustainer, it's okay, it doesn't matter that much here. The one who created, okay? The one who created. Now, look, it says in the translation that you've shown us, recite. I don't think it's recite at all. I think that Iqra is to read something written for the purpose of understanding it. That's what I understand what Iqra means. To read something written for the purpose of understanding it, as opposed to tatlu, itlu. Itlu does not have that element of understanding. But let's continue. خلق الإنسان من علق. This is not, our purpose here to understand this, but let's go through these verses. خلق الإنسان من علق, created humans from علق. Again, this is something that I'd rather not to go into right now, because notice that the emphasis of insan, not bashar. Okay, so whether alaq is the zygote, I don't believe in that. I believe the alaq here is the plural of ilaqat, relationships, because humans cannot exist without relationships. But anyways, that's not our focus here. اقرأ وربك الأكرم. The third, اقرأ وربك الأكرم, read for the purpose of understanding, and your sustainer is the Akram. Akram, from my understanding, it is the embodiment of the highest values, not generosity, embodiment of the highest values. Okay, now we get to the bottom line, or at least what we're focusing on here. الذي علم بالقلم. الذي علم بالقلم. So if these verses are one of the first that were revealed to Muhammad, the messenger of Allah, then this is a key to understand the ilm. علم بالقلم. علم This is the word that we're after. بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. القلم is classification. To classify. So the only Allah is saying that the way to teach, perhaps, to make people understand something is through classification. This is amazing. This is very, very powerful. And notice that it is not علم the next verse علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم, but the verse that we just mentioned علم بالقلم. It's so generic. It's not referring to insan only. It's very generic. In other words, the only way to educate, if I may say, is to make someone understand something, because that's what we want to get to. Allama, educate, understand the core of the background of something. It is through classification. Qalam. And notice in the story of Maryam, يرموا أقلامهم. Each one had a marker who will support Maryam. So علم بالقلم, qalam is to classify. That's the only way we humans learn something. Now, you can show me, for instance, you can let me hear different frequencies, different tones, let's say acoustical tones. Okay, thank you. I recognize them, A, B, C, whatever, fa, so, do. But so what? I recognize them. I'm not denying that. If you tell me, did you recognize these distinct tones? I will say, yes, I did recognize them. So what? And then, علم is I start classifying التقليم بالقلم. I start classifying these tones so I can make something out of them. Huge difference. Okay. Now so now we come to start realizing that there's recognition, and there's ilm. Recognition is different from ilm. And we will come to certain verses that also shed light on that, on this. Ilm is a process, has to be a process, not a trivial process. It may take long time. It may take very long time, but recognition can be instantaneous. I will show you examples. If so the case that the when Allah talks in, again, Surah I believe Surah Baqarah 2:31, this is, in my opinion, can be classified or referred to as the Genesis in the Quran, comparable to the Bible and the Old Testament. وعلم آدم الأسماء كلها. Notice, علم آدم الأسماء كلها. Not عرف آدم الأسماء كلها. So here we're not talking about recognition or identification. We're not. And it's not as if Allah said to the angels, hey, come, let's have a chat, let's sit together. No. علم آدم الأسماء كلها. How can you teach a name or to make someone understand a name? This is really deep. But my only understanding is that it is the process. This Allah is mentioning the process of how humans came to give names to items. A process. Could be tens of thousands of years. I don't know. But it's a process, because again, we talked about this before, why Arabic is the language that Allah chose, because it's a natural language. It's not the language of the Arabs. Forget about the Arabs. It's a natural way to express Allah's reality and it evolved naturally, just like, you know, I challenge any scientist around the world to show me an equation other than differential equations that I mentioned earlier that describe nature. And again, you know, the Chinese historically wanted to be independent scientifically, many other nations, but they all converged. There's no other way. There's no other way. You know, what Newton and Leibniz came up with was not an invention. It was a discovery. The differential, it was a discovery. If they didn't come up with them, someone else, you know, if I did not discover, if someone did not discover brass or copper, someone else would have discovered it. They did not invent it. It's something natural. Okay, so if we look at back to the Surah 2, verse 31, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. Not عرف. Look at the translations, brothers and sisters. Look at the translations. I mean, it doesn't satisfy your anything. In fact, of course, we don't want to go into these distractions of what the Mufassirin said. You know, Allah said to the Adam, "This is a dog." Repeat after me. This is a dog. Don't laugh. I'm serious. This is how that I'm serious. This is a mule. This is a mule. You know, so the names, how people evolved, how we evolved to name things came from knowing the essence or understanding the essence of these things. And no wonder when you go back to some fascinating Arabic, you know, discussions of how words imply the sounds of certain words imply certain things. Because of time, I have to move on. Otherwise, if I get stuck on certain things, but let me go to this verse. Okay, this verse in first of all, I'm going to talk about the ilm and then talk about the ma'rifah. Okay, verse Surah Al-Baqarah 102. ولكن الشياطين كفروا. I'm plucking a phrase out of the verse. Surah 2, verse 102. ولكن الشياطين كفروا يعلمون الناس السحر. The shayateen, they made kufr. They were يعلمون الناس السحر. They were educating, telling people how to make sihr. So clearly يعلمون here is not يعرفون. You know, I can identify, let's say that someone had been bewitched, or I can identify a witch versus from I can give to someone the understanding or the background how to make to make witchcraft, on the assumption that sihr here is the classical witchcraft. We don't want to get into it. Our interest is يعلمون. Now, I don't want, Brother Hamza in particular, I want to tell you this, I don't want to cherry pick. I'm not. There is so many verses in the Mus'haf, I think 700 and something, that have the word ilm. And if we want to analyze everyone, we can't finish, number one. Number two, we don't want to cherry pick to create the image that I preconceived in advance. No, absolutely not. Okay, but suffice it to take few ones and to reflect on them in a deeper way. Verse 233, Surah again Al-Baqarah 33. قال ألم أقل لكم إني أعلم غيب السماوات والأرض. Look, أعلم غيب السماوات والأرض وأعلم ما تبدون وما كنتم تكتمون. قال, he proclaimed, he declared, didn't I declare to you that I أعلم غيب, the hidden, of the heavens and the earth. Okay, now notice he is referring, Allah is referring to things, the ghaib of things. The ghaib of things is different from the ghaib of acts. وأعلم, then he went to وأعلم ما تبدون وما كنتم تكتمون. He's, of course, this is quote unquote a conversation, a dialogue with the angels. I أعلم what you what you're revealing. ما تبدون, what you are revealing. وما كنتم تكتمون, and what you were hiding inside of you. Okay. Now, ghaib is relative. To Allah, it's not ghaib. But to humans or to the angels, it could be ghaib. So ghaib is relative, number one. The thing that really got me very curious in this one is Allah said, look, ma tubdun, I know, I a'lam, I understand, not I a'raf, I a'lam, what you are revealing. And revealing is what? Is present tense. Ma tubdun. And I really want to emphasize that the tense does make a difference in the Mus'haf. The tense, whether we really don't understand the use of the tense is our problem. But the tense does make a difference because Allah used different tenses. Okay, He used something that happened in the past. He used a tense to refer to what is happening presently, if such thing can be defined as a present. And third, he did use tense that talks about something that will happen in the future. Okay, so now, just as a quick example, غُلِبَتُ الروم في أدنى الأرض. This is the verse that talks about Rum. وَهُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ غَلَبِهِمْ سَيَغْلِبُونَ. So here's a proof that Allah talks about what is to come. وَهُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ غَلَبِهِمْ سَيَغْلِبُونَ. Okay, now why did I mention this, the Rum verse? Because I want to go back to this. Allah didn't say مَا تُبْدُونَ وَمَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْتُمُونَ وَمَا سَتَكْتُمُونَ or وَمَا سَتُبْدُونَ. Look, he stopped. He talked about what you have revealed, what you were revealing, what you used to hide within yourself, and what you are expressing right now. He didn't say, and also I will understand what you will reveal in the future. Now, there's no, I'm not implying anything. I'm just making sure that we notice this. I'm not implying anything. Now, I will come to whether Allah knows, whether Allah understands the future or not. Let's make it that till the very end. Now, I want to go to Arafah. We covered certain verses that talked about ilm. Sorry, there's a very, very important one. Sorry. I have to, yeah. 183. 2 Baqarah 183 and 184. This I pondered upon, I thought a lot about it in the past. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, I will read it quickly in Arabic. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, the two of them. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, those who have made iman. Kutiba alaykum as-siyam. Siyam had been kutiba. Let me just leave it like that. Kutiba alaykum as-siyam. Fasting. Siyam, fasting. كما كتب على الذين من قبلهم, as it was kutiba on the people before you, lest you have taqwa, لعلكم تتقون. Next, أياما معدودات, numbered days. فمن كان منكم مريضا, whoever was sick, أو على سفر, or on travel, فعدة من أيام أخر, he can make up for it other days. وعلى الذين يطيقونه, and those who can do it, who are able to do it, i.e. صيام, فدية طعام مسكين, you feed a مسكين person. فمن يتطوع, فمن تطوع, whoever volunteers, it's good for him. Look at the last phrase. وَإِن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. And if you fast, it is beneficial. خير. But خير is beneficial. It is beneficial for you إن كنتم تعلمون. Wait a minute. Why did he say إن كنتم تعلمون? You know, Allah's, if someone tells me, why do you believe in this book? I tell you, because its precision is infinite. You know, just like you give me a book in thermodynamics and you tell me, do you really believe this came from this author? I have to look carefully to see if there are flaws, contradictions, and precision, all of these things. So when I look at this, وَإِن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ, Allah says, and if you fast, it is beneficial for you. Period. Why should you go any further? The piece of information came to me from my Lord. So I'm not going to doubt it. So I have that knowledge. But look what he said. In kuntum ta'lamun. Which means that what? Which means Allah wants me to understand why it's beneficial for me. In kuntum ta'rafun. If the ilm is ma'rifah, in kuntum ta'rafun, no need for him to say that. Because he told me this. In other words, I'll tell you, Brother Hamza, your hat is beautiful. You know, you are wearing a black hat. If you know, but I told you you're wearing a black hat. Done. What is this redundancy? One of the validation of Allah's book is that it can be compared to nature. Absolutely. Nature, there's no redundancy in nature. It's precise. It's repeatable. You know, when we got the aerodynamics of aircrafts right, we don't have crashes anymore. Repeatable. And by the way, you'll be surprised. I'm not an aerodynamics guy. It fascinates me how a huge aircraft flies. Every time I fly, and I flew tons of times, every time I'm like a little baby. It's all empirical information. It's all taqlim. It's all classification. And that's what led us to achieve this level of proficiency in something, in my opinion, extremely marvelous. So that, as far as this verse is really important to say, why did Allah say in kuntum ta'lamun, not in kuntum ta'rafun? Now, let's talk then about Arafah. Now I flip the page, talk about Arafah. It's much easier when we discuss Arafah than to talk about ilm, because not much in the Mus'haf, okay? You know, when Allah talks about it appears A'raf, there's a surah named A'raf. Al-Ma'ruf appears several times. Al-Ma'ruf, always Al-Ma'ruf is opposed to Al-Munkar. You know, it's so beautiful that Allah asked us to look. Allah never asked us to command people to do what's right. Amazing. وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ in 3:104, Surah 3, verse 104, amongst others. يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Allah wants us to command for people to do what's known, what is common, what's a commonplace. I mean, this is a very, very strong testimony to the concept of consensus and democracy in societies. But that's not our topic here. يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. In many other verses in the Mus'haf, munkar, ma'ruf. Two opposite sides. Let's look at Surah Al-Baqarah, 273, and this is the one I'll just say a little bit about it, but then there's also Surah 47, verse 30, Surah 55, verse 41, and Surah 83, verse 24. All of them have a message. And it's summarized. I cannot summarize it. We cannot summarize one verse in the Mus'haf, several verses by one, but one gives the flavor of what I want to say. أغنياء in Baqarah 273, Allah, the phrase is أغنياء من التعفف تعرفهم بسيماهم. You know them through their appearance or through something, through their aura, through their expression. Okay, and this is a recognition. Notice the implication is recognition. You recognize them based on something. The recognition is instantaneous. It's not a, of course it's a mental process for sure. Everything is a mental process, but it is in practical terms, it's instantaneous. In the story of Yusuf, 12, I think it's 12, Surah 12, verse 58. Yusuf فدخلوا عليه فعرفهم. They entered Yusuf when his brothers entered. فعرفهم وهم له منكرون. In other words, he realized them, recognized them, realized them, and they did not recognize him. See, munkarun. Munkarun is not denying him or making kufr in him or making kadhib in him. No, it is they did not recognize him. Munkar, ma'rifa, opposite. Okay, and again in Surah in Yusuf 12:62, Surah 12 verse 62, وقال لفتيانه, and he, Yusuf, declared to his servants, فتيانه is secretaries or servants, اجعلوا بضاعتهم في رحالهم, okay, لعلهم يعرفونها, okay, put a certain item within their belongings lest they recognize it. يعرفوها. See, recognition. Okay. 22, Surah 22:72. I'm not going to mention all of them, just a few. وَإِذَا تُتْلَى عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِنَا. And if آياتنا are tutla, notice not تقرأ. وإذا تتلى عليهم آياتنا تعرف في وجوه الذين كفروا المنكر. You recognize in the face of those who made kufr. You look, recognition, تعرف. So in other words, Allah did not fail to give us a counter argument to understand ilm. 2793, 2793. وقل الحمد لله سيريكم آياته. الحمد لله سيريكم آياته فتعرفونها. Wow. He will show you. And I stand by this. I think سيريكم here means to show you his signs. فتعرفونها. You recognize it. وما ربك بغافل عما تعملون. You know, this is, I don't think we can give this verse justice today because I think I have to reflect on it much, much more. But I thought a lot about it because sometimes I try to understand what Allah is saying by playing with some words and replacing words. بدل. I make tabdil of words and see what comes up. وقل الحمد لله سيريكم آياته فتعرفونها. So the ayah, the question comes to my mind, is the ayah to be, do we need to understand the ayah or do we need to recognize the ayah? You see? Big difference. Do we need, and I think that the kufr is the denial of the recognition of the ayah. In other words, if I see something, I see Brother Hamza, and someone said, did you see Brother Hamza? That's kufr. Okay, that's kufr. So do I understand you? I may not understand who you are. You know, I may not. That's a different story. Okay. So if we look back, what سيريكم آياته, he showed you, that's the beginning. In my opinion, there's a process. He showed you the ayah. فتعرفونها. Okay, you cannot say that this is not a sun. Okay, now what is this sun made of? Hydrogen, nitrogen, fire. That's a different story. I really think that there's a process here. Okay, some people, okay, so the recognition is the first thing. If there's no recognition, you know, if there's no recognition, there's no point going forward. Now, so the question is that I ask in this context, is the ayah something to be understood or to be يعلم or to be يعرف, to يعلم or the يعرف of the ayah? Is it to be recognized or is it to be understood? Not to deviate from the subject, I gave an example to a friend recently. You know, we're sitting in a beautiful night and you see the stars, and let's say my friend is just an artist who he'd never had any scientific education. He said, this is beautiful sky dotted with, you know, stars, and I tell him, look, these are dead stars. You know, these stars used to be a long time ago. I have some experience in physics, whatever, in light, optics, but both of us have the same thing in common. We recognized what we see. Now, Allah uses يفصل يبين. Notice. يريكم آياته, سيريكم آياته. He will show you ayat. But then elsewhere in the Mus'haf, he talks about يفصل آياته. And in my opinion, probably the progression is يريكم آياته. Next is يبين آياته. There is that expression in the Mus'haf. يبين آياته. And then there is يفصل آياته. Believe it or not, there is these three things. يريكم, of course, there is يتلو عليكم. يتلو, in my opinion, is to narrate. There's nothing else but to narrate. Reference. Narrate with a reference. Then there is يريكم, and there is يفصل, يبين, and there is يفصل. Okay, so this is something that, like we would say, collateral benefit from looking into the subject of ilm. Now, to conclude, a few minutes, I don't want to go beyond the hour. Does Allah, with all this background, with this discussion, with these, interesting, in my opinion, looking into what Allah has communicated to us, does Allah know the future? I don't think that Allah knows the future. I hope that don't record this and send it to all the people I know, and no, I think Allah يعلم the future. And so I like to bring into here this discussion is what Muhammad Shahrur, who was very, very revolutionary in kind of untangling this subject. You see, first of all, I'll come to Muhammad Shahrur in a second, but the question of ilmullah, Allah's ilm versus Allah's ma'rifah, had been conflated historically with predestination. And I think that the two have to be separated completely. We can discuss predestination in its own right, and we can discuss Allah's ilm. The two are mutually exclusive. I don't see why they should be conflated. Now, predestination is not our subject today. We can talk about it if anybody's interested, but I believe that contrary to what Muhammad Shahrur said, is that Allah knows the different possibilities. Now, this is not far-fetched. This is not outlandish. This is not, because I believe that, how Einstein said Allah doesn't play dice with the universe. I believe that the whole creation is statistical, but that's a different story. But there are different possibilities, and what Muhammad Shahrur says, that Allah knows these possibilities. You see? So in other words, there is a certain discrete set of possibilities that may happen. Allah knows these in or infinite or finite, whatever discrete set of possibilities. I don't find that comforting at all. I don't. I think that Allah ya'lam, meaning He is al-alim. Why did Allah say al-alim? Why did He throw that word for us? Why? It means, it must mean something big. He's not al-alim. He's al-alim, the summation of all the ilms. He has it, which means He can predict the future precisely. And that's the difference between knowing the future, which has no substantiation in the Mus'haf, whereas if I know all the laws of thermodynamics and mechanics and what have you, the trajectory that I shoot with my cannon will fall precisely where I want it to be. So I hope that is not blasphemous. And we stand to be corrected always. And I think that there's more to the subject. And I think the more we indulge in science, the more we indulge in science and reality, the better, the closer we are to the truth, because Allah's signs are not philosophical. They're purely material based. I don't want to say materialistic, that has a different connotation, but Allah's signs are purely material. And as we started, we will always be grounded in reality. Thank you, brother. Thank you, brothers, for listening, for your patience.
Okay, thank you very much for that precise and timely presentation, Brother Omar. Now we'll open the Zoom up for questions. Anyone who's tuning in, who has now just listened, you may take an opportunity to ask questions regarding this presentation. Anyone?
Yeah, Omar, something like Tariq here. Just on your last comment, when you said that Allah doesn't know the future, if I heard you right, but He can precisely predict the future. Does that mean that Allah, a prediction can still carry with it, I believe, an element of error? Is that correct? You said, like, about the weather, the meteorologists today can predict things with pretty good precision, but they can still be wrong. So when you say the Allah doesn't know the future, but can precisely predict it, when you say precisely predict, that's confusing. That also means that He then knows the future. But if it doesn't mean that, but it means that He's predicting something, and a prediction can be right or be wrong. Is that correct?
No, brother. If I, when there's a crash, when there's an aircraft crash, of course, many Muslims say, what's wrong with these Westerners? What's wrong with these, people? Can they just accept Allah's fate? No, they don't. They go and find out precisely what caused that crash. And that increases their ilm in that field. That increases their ilm. I'll come to this point, but just to give you another example. When the Iranian Revolution took place, the culmination of it, and during Carter's time, they tried to rescue the hostages, and they sent an airplanes that got entangled in the desert, and they crashed. What did the Americans do? The Americans, they said, we want to learn from this, precisely what happened. And that led to what is now called the Delta Force, which had been extremely effective. Of course, in a negative way, that's a different story, but had been very, very effective. My point is, if one knows, if this is, in the engineering world, there's a revolution going on. There's a silent revolution. There are now computer codes. They call them multi-physics and numerical codes that combine different physics, if I may say, into one. Brother, if I show you the prediction of these codes, you'll be baffled. You'll say, this is magic. In fact, one time I told one of my students, you fake the data. I was joking, of course. I said, you fake the data. She said, no. I put all the parameters. Now, do people, the weather prediction is one of the toughest. Why? Because people used to talk about chaos theory. It turns out that chaos theory, I'm going to say something which sounds like an oxymoron. It is predictable science.
Yeah, exactly.
You see? So the more Allah,
chaos.
If one has it all, the prediction is precise. I want to share with you two verses. And I forgot to mention them. 48:18. 48, Surah 48, verse 18. لَقَدْ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Allah was content with those who made iman. إِذْ يُبَايِعُونَكَ. Notice, let's pay attention to the past tense and the present. إِذْ يُبَايِعُونَكَ. When they were giving you bay'ah, allegiance, تَحْتَ الشَّجَرَةِ. Under the tree. Notice what comes after that. فَعَلِمَ مَا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ. Wow. فَعَلِمَ مَا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ. فَأَنزَلَ السَّكِينَةَ عَلَيْهِمْ. فَعَلِمَ. So he alima, then alima what was in their hearts. Isn't that powerful? Now, many mufassirin try to avoid this altogether. They don't want to mention this verse.
Now, what's that mean in English now, Omar? What you just said?
Then he, alima, if you want to use the word, became aware, or if you want to use
no.
Or whatever. Okay? This, see, فَعَلِمَ فَأَنزَلَ السَّكِينَةَ عَلَيْهِمْ. Then he descended tranquility on them. You see? Now, this is really powerful. This is Allah saying this. Okay, there's another one. Now, before I continue, fa, if you look at the conjunction fa, the conjunction fa, from what I understand in the Mus'haf, can be used for two reasons. One, to explain something. This fa means that I am describing what preceded it. And the other usage is a consequence, is an event,
Mm.
event that follows the first one. Now, clearly here, look, if we look, يبايعونك تحت الشجرة, they are giving you allegiance under the tree. فعلم ما في قلوبهم. Then he علم what is in their minds, not hearts. I don't believe in that. So obviously the two are disjoint. يبايعونك تحت الشجرة has nothing to do with علم ما في قلوبهم. Clearly one is a consequence of the other. But let's look at the other one. There's one here. Very, very powerful verse. Very. So let's look at 48:27. Again, the same surah, 48. ولقد صدق الله رسوله الرؤيا بالحق لا تدخلن المسجد الحرام إن شاء الله آمنين محلقين رؤوسكم ومقصرين لا تخافون. I'm gonna skip translating this, but Allah is talking about when they entered the Masjid al-Haram, if He will. فعلم, again, فعلم ما لم يعلموا. فعلم. You see, then Allah had the understanding of what they did not have. فجعل من ذلك فجعل to the end of the verse فجعل من دون ذلك فتحا قريبا. The focus here is فعلم. This appeared twice in verse 48. You see, now if my understanding is correct, is incorrect, please, I like to be.
Not only, thank you for that explanation. I'm just focusing on one word that you had used in the English. I don't pretend that I have the intellectual position right now to understand what you're saying with the Arabic right now. Understand when you use the word predict, right? That's a forecast, and any prediction can still be wrong. So if you say Allah precisely predicts, when you add the word precisely to that, then the wrong part becomes removed. And Allah can only predict accurately every single time. Okay? He can't predict anything and be wrong at any time. If He's precisely predicting, using your phrase, then He knows exactly the outcome. For us as humans, when we predict precisely, we can still have error. And in the Quran, He says that the messenger cannot err. Therefore, Allah cannot err. So if you say precisely predict, for me, I'm hearing that Allah is predicting to the point where there is no error in His prediction, where there will be an error in human prediction. You follow me?
Absolutely, brother. You know what?
Okay.
I absolutely. Maybe we are, myself including, is at fault for using words that we have, accustomed to predict. Maybe there's a better word.
Yeah. I think the word alam captures all of it. Allah has to know everything.
Exactly, and this is and
I can imagine not knowing one single thing.
And this is something that, since we don't have an example of without Him, we cannot have that expression because we don't have an example of. You see, I had a thought is that anyways, brother Yasin, sorry.
Thank you for your response, Omar.
Sure.
And for your lecture.
Can I just pick up on that also? Brother Tariq spoke about not knowing the Arabic term for predict. He knows the English term, and apparently he gave you the dictionary or lexicological, if I'm saying it right, meaning of the word predict in English. Now, Brother Omar, what Arabic word are you using to translate predict before I go any further?
Brother, that's a very good question. If you look to anticipate, maybe it's not the right one, يتنبأ, to it's not the right one. يتنبأ, يتنبأ is to assume that you know a naba. So that is typically used in that, close to it, يتنبأ بالمستقبل. If but I think we're talking about something, not you or I, but there are different things in, يتنبأ has the context, and predict has a different background to it. There's a different background to it. There's some kind of a magical background to it. I bring the crystal ball and I do something, and I talk to the stars and all of that thing. Allah demystified that. I think Allah demystified that. It is science. It is science. I mean, we cannot, I keep going back to the example of the aircraft, brother, but this is not a minor example. It's not a minor example. I just flew in recently in a plane that has 500 people, and I flew so many times, and I said, wow, nobody is even afraid anymore. We conquered a lot of physical laws. It's not magical. It's not magical. Allah is Alim. We want to approach him. We want to approach him in his attributes, in my opinion. What is to approach him? Come closer to him? No, we want to come closer to him in his attribute. We become Rahim, Alim. All of these attributes, not names. We cannot come to him in his name. That's why I think Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahman is not an attribute that we cannot dream of getting close to that name, because it's a name, it's not an attribute. You see, so it is yes, it's a big issue, and Allah wants to demystify, to show us. I don't think there's any mystery in the creation, in the religion. I mean, I don't think there's a mystery. I mean, not to change the subject, you talked about the conception of Jesus. I think we historically, whether we know Jesus's father is a different story, that's a different story. But the shuyukh, the clergy, the rabbis, the priests, historically, their modus operandi, their mission in life was to mystify every single thing, to mystify it, to the opposite of freedom. Absolutely. And the Mus'haf said, go for it. Think. When Allah talks about in that very powerful verse, شهد الله أنه لا إله إلا هو الملائكة وأولو العلم, not أولو المعرفة, وأولو العلم. Those testify to the oneness. Notice, they testified to the oneness of a deity. Wow, powerful. They testified not to oneness of Allah. They testify to the oneness of deity. Those ulul ilm may not know who Allah is. That's why Allah sent the revelation. It's empirical. You cannot know something without some information. But they testify to the uniqueness of that deity. We Muslims sometimes kind of dismiss what ulama said. I think we should listen carefully to what ulama said. Carefully. When Einstein, just to take it as an iconic figure, he said, I believe there's a deity, one. Okay, deity. Oh, we dismiss it, this is a Jewish conspiracy, he's a Jew, he's a this, who that. We should listen. We should listen. Shahid Allah. Look, Shahid Allah. Wow. He didn't say Shahid al-Malaik, Shahid al-Anbiya. Now, the translation of that verse, of course, they'll say Anbiya, Salihin, and all of that, but Allah says Ulul Ilm, you know, and in the other verse, when Allah talks about mountains of red color, birds, black birds, and whatnot, إنما يخشى الله من عباده العلماء. So there's a tendency. I like to say this. There's a tendency in our collective traditional culture, and I hope we get rid of it, to really belittle ilm. I'm really sorry to say it. I'm going to tell you frankly, to belittle ilm, to disconnect ilm, to the point, and I talked about this in the book, and I don't think it was a random thing, to the point that even any reference to the brain had been diverted to refer to my heart, my kidney, my spleen. You know, I mean, this is the place. This is the only thing. This is us. There's nothing else but here. This is us. You know, you cannot have a brain transplant. You cannot. You can have a heart transplant. You know, and no wonder to be closer to Allah is through what? Reality, brother, isn't it? I mean, these are the signs, right? These are the signs. You know, I don't want to talk too much, but Allah is not a philosopher. Sorry to say it. Allah is not a philosopher. He said, think about this and try to reach this conclusion. He said, look, touch, feel, observe, sense, right?
Yeah. Okay, just to go further, thank you for that discourse on that question so far. But you know, I appreciate you specifically your desire to deal with words. Words have meaning. And Allah says in the Quran, in chapter 10, verse 82, that Allah will establish, pretty much it translates as, Allah will establish, 1082, Allah will establish the truth to be the truth by his words. Now, words are important. And so when, like Brother Tariq, I felt what he was coming from when you said predict. We had a discussion sometime before in our class about Allah deciding. I don't think Allah has to decide anything, like, you know, think about this and make a decision. But now, to get back to my point with the Arabic term, if we look in the Quran, and I think you touched around that topic earlier, in the Quran, chapter 2, 31. Chapter 2, 31, and then from that, chapter 2, 31, when you read that, chapter 35, verse 14, both of those use the verb naba'a, to announce something, to announce. I don't use the term predict or naba, meaning to tell, predict the future or foretell. No, to tell forth. There's a big difference. To tell forth, meaning what I say must happen. It must happen. So now Allah told Adam here to announce to them the names or description, whatever that word means there. The word is from the verb naba'a. And then when we look over in chapter 35, verse 14, Allah, none can inform like Allah, the all aware one. So from the same root, naba'a. So I'm thinking now that this perhaps is the word that we're looking for that will replace any idea of predict. That Allah will tell forth. He tells forth. There's no past, present, or future for Allah. So it's nothing to predict in the future. Everything is, Allah knows everything as if it's just one moment in time. There's no time barrier for Allah and his existence, his knowledge, and so forth. What do you think about those two verses and the word naba?
You know, yes, brother, thank you for pointing this, and I'm looking at it. إن تدعوهم لا يسمعون دعاء ولا سمعوا ما استجابوا لكم ويوم القيامة يكفرون بشرككم ولا ينبئك مثل خبير. ولا ينبئك. It is possible. I mean, I have to look at نبأ, you know, because ينبئ, يخبر, two words that have been used. How people thought that نبأ is related to prophecy. يتنبأ. I don't know. I really don't know. But I want to. You mentioned something that I don't find there's enough substantiation to believe in that time to Allah is irrelevant. I don't know if you implied that. I don't. Regardless whether you implied it or not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, the law is not constrained by anything called time as we understand time. Allah always existed. He has no past, present, or future for his being. He's eternal without beginning or end or any time frame for his existence. He exists necessarily by himself as he is. There's nothing called a time when he didn't exist or when he will not exist. This is pretty much what I'm trying to say. Maybe that's a stretch of saying that in the context of this point that I'm making here. The point that I'm making here is specifically about Allah naba'a, something that Allah tells forth something, and that thing he says must happen. It must happen. It's not like a prophet in the sense of say the Hebrew term prophet naba'a means to foretell. No, the word is tell forth. There's a big difference in the two. Anyway, that might be a little bit much. I'm just basically, I just didn't particularly absorb this idea of predict. I think it has some flavor of indecisiveness attached to it. But be that as it may, it's nothing to make an issue about.
fully understand you and Brother Tariq. I mean, this is, yes, because I mean, I'm using a word that is an English word and juxtaposing it on understanding the most. Maybe that's a challenge.
I think there's a brother Yassine on deck. He has a question for you, Brother Omar. Yassine, are you there?
Yes, Salamun Alaykum.
Malik, my brother. What's your question?
I joined late, but I was wondering, did he say that Allah doesn't know the future? Well, I had joined a little late.
You can speak directly to him. He's there. He's listening.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that Allah has the ilm, the full understanding to, let's use the word, to tell, and not to predict, to tell what the future would be. Would be. And I base this, you know, I based it on my reading of the Mus'haf, pure and simple. You know, that's my conclusion. There's the only mystery in the universe is in our head. There is complexity in the universe, for sure. There's complexity, but there's no mystery. If you look at a NASA rocket, okay, you can dissect each component. I mean, after all, there are engineers with a 4-year education who have built these pieces, right? If you dissect every system, okay, every system, then you find that it is fully understandable. There's no magic. To a naive person sitting somewhere in the world looking at that rocket flying, they say, wow, you know, these are, how did they do it? Okay,
right.
So I think that this is my understanding. We sometimes try to conclude things that Allah never said about himself. I mean, I like to understand my Lord. I like to understand him. And
Yes.
the only way to understand him, the beginning, is this piece of material that he communicated to me. That's it. Some people, especially many philosophers, Muslims, they go to the extreme of characterizing Allah with things that are not present in the Mus'haf. I mean, this is not a sign of loving Allah more than myself. No, it's not. It's not. I mean, Allah precisely said what he is. Okay, to go beyond that, uh, a friend of mine, one of my former students, brilliant guy, he said, people dismiss this. Of course, this kun fayakun, it's nothing but notice that kun fayakun is always related to amr, never been related to khalq. Huge difference. Kun fayakun is always associated with amr. In other words, Trump or whatever, Biden said, I want to invade Iraq. Okay, he said, I want to invade Iraq. It's an amr. The process will take a while to ship the troops and all of that. Okay, but so the kun, the our understanding, what Allah's this student of mine said, why did Allah create the earth and the heavens in 6 days?
Right.
Very, very
All
powerful.
right.
Why not in a snap? Why not in one day? I
Right.
mean, aside from that these days are not our days, but there was a time process. There was a time process. There was a process. This is demystification everything, because when we demystify everything, we become empowered. Just like when I am as a teacher, I demystify things to my students. You can't believe how empowered they are. They become like
Right.
a ball of fire, so the more we learn, brother, the more we learn, the more we demystify all of this, isn't it?
Right. The reason why I had asked that was because I wanted you to take a look at 255 and tell me what you make of this phrase or this part of the
Surah
ayah.
Baqarah 250 verse Surah 2.
Yeah, Surah 2, 255. And it
255.
says,
Got it.
Yalamu ma bayna adihim wa ma kafahum. And that translates to, usually it translates into, he knows, hold on, sorry. He knows what is before them and what will be after them. What do you make of that ayat? Oh, that part of that statement.
يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون شيئا من علمه. It fits into the pattern that I was discussing, is that he understands. It's not that he knows. I mean, there are so many translations in the Mus'haf where they translated يعلم as to be aware, to know, but that's not correct. ولا يحيطون بشيء علمه إلا بما شاء. They don't approach his ilm, not his ma'rifah. Very powerful, his ilm, except what he willed. Okay, so I really don't see any challenge here. When Allah says من إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين يعلم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء. Okay, they cannot approach. The question is, did that verse علم بالقلم is our limitation? I mean, some people think of it as the theory of knowledge, or the theory of knowledge as described in the Mus'haf. علم بالقلم. There's no other way to to learn except through classification. You know, this revolution of artificial intelligence, what is it? You know, artificial intelligence is extremely simple. It's classification. You classify, you classify, you classify, you classify. Is there any other way? That's the question. Is there any other way to learn aside from classification? I don't know. I don't think there is. That's the only, you know, we put things together and we make a conclusion. We classify whether it's frequencies, whether it's smell, whether, you know, the child goes and touches the oven. Ouch, it hurts. Now they have a reference. The reference is classification. Is now I know, I connect A to B. I touch this, it hurts. And is there any other way to learn other than this? In other words, Allah says, "Allama bil qalam." Now, how? I don't know how our brain is there any other way for our brain to learn something aside from classification? You know, a very, very interesting subject that I debated with some of my colleagues some time ago. If you were to put the most important scientist who changed the way the world, we see the world, we live in the world, just single-handedly one person, Michael Faraday. If you were to put him on an island without any tools to classify anything, and listen, let's assume that he's the most genius person in this world, I don't think he would, it's impossible that he would come up with anything. Impossible. Impossible. Put Einstein, Rutherford, Newton. Impossible. Newton saw an apple falling. If you were to put them and they cannot have material to classify, how would they reach these equations that they came up with? It's impossible. So this is a very powerful Ayat al-Kursi, right? The one that you refer to. لا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء. You know, if we think of it as they will not reach pieces of information until I decree, I don't think that satisfies me, that understanding. No, it's much, much deeper. لا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء. The first verse that we mentioned today, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. Before that, علم بالقلم. You see, of course, what do the translators say? That Allah held this and started writing, and people behind they started repeating. It's much, much deeper than we've been duped to believe. Much, much deeper than we've been duped to believe. I mean, I look at it again. Just allow me. It says, is really this experience just 10 days ago when I flew from the Middle East, taking this A380 aircraft. I mean, if you parse every little bit of it, brother, oh, okay, it's understandable. You know, this part, this part, this, but putting it together looks mysterious, but it is not mysterious. And you know that the concept of mystery goes against the concept of hidayah. I think they're contradictory. Hidayah and mystery. You know, mystery, control. Hidayah, liberation. Anyways.
Thank you. That's all I had. That's all I had.
Well, thank you very much, Brother Yasin, and good to hear from you.
Likewise.
Anybody else has a question for Brother Omar?
Yes.
Anyone?
Yes, this is Abdul. Salamun Alaykum.
Wa alaikum salam, brother. How are you? Go ahead with your question.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Just I want to ask that Allama, is there any relation with Ghaib? You know, Guyub, Allama ful Guyub. So it's what's not yet. That's my question.
Yeah, Allam al-Ghuyub. Thank
Yeah.
you for raising that point. Allam al-Ghuyub. Again, I don't see, this the reference to this will change, any of what we've kind of said or concluded. Ghaib is relative, Ghaib is for us is not what ghaib for Allah, Ghaib for me is not what ghaib for brother Hamza Malik, Ghaib for me is what he sees on his desk, but he sees something on his desk, If I had sensors that are put everywhere in his room, then I probably would be, seeing what he has on his desk. So it's I think the only way we can broaden and reach new heights is through science. I mean, isn't it? It's through science. I mean, this technology that we have in front of us should elevate our thinking, should elevate rather than just to be consumers of this science. I always thought about how when someone perishes, let's say in a car accident and evaporates, let's say, or you put, I'm sorry to use these gory examples, but you put acid on someone and there's nothing left of that. But nowadays we can think of the iCloud. The iCloud as if everything we do is already transmitted to some processor somewhere in the universe. And you know what? This is the reality for the little things we do right now. We lose our computer, everything is in the iCloud, where while physically it's in a server on the Amazon, on the Columbia River in Oregon, in the state of Oregon. But it's we're getting there. We're getting to believe that yes, I will never perish. I cannot perish. The information is there. Reconstructing right now, we can do 3D printing. I can send a file to India and they can reproduce the geometry just through a software program. If we look at the material science, they're the only ones that Allah referred to strengthen to validate that this is a book that is worthy of respect as coming from Allah. And now, of course, this is where we deviate or we part from the so-called materialistic people, because they say, oh, this is a materialistic perspective. No, wait a minute. This is where we deviate. We deviate in that all of this is intended to make us have a lawful, peaceful life. Not just for the material stop there. No, it is intended for us to accept these laws from Allah, these hudud, these injunctions, to have a better family life, a better society, a peaceful society, a peaceful. That's the key. That's the key. That's the bottom line. Okay, so it is materialistic people stop there. No, we don't. We say that's the tool only, the means to achieve a close to utopian life on earth.
Anybody else? Any questions? Any further questions? Let me ask you, Brother Omar. Excuse me. Oh, Billy. Okay, I understand. Billy, are you there? You have a question?
Yes, please. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Go ahead, no problem.
First of all, Salaam Alaikum. It's nice to meet you, Omar. Salaam Alaikum, bro, Yasin as well. It's nice to meet you as well, like on a call for the first time. So it's
Yeah,
so
Malik
cool to be
Salam.
on a call with y'all. I appreciate that a lot. I guess I have two points to raise. The first one is just examples given in verses, and the second point hinges more on the definition of words in this case. And I really enjoyed your presentation as well. I just wanted to throw that out there. I guess my first question is that there are verses like Surah 33, verse 66, for example, where it says, "The day their faces will be turned about in the fire, they will say, how we wish we had obeyed Allah and obeyed his messenger." So let's take that verse, for example. That verse seems to predict a future event. It seems that Allah knows whether on knows how they will react on Judgment Day in that future event taking place. And the reason I chose this verse specifically is because there's other verses, right? Like, just for example, let me pull this up. There are other verses, like, say, for example, Surah 19, verse 19 to 21, where Miriam ultimately receives the message that she's going to be having a baby. And Allah says it's a matter decreed. And I didn't want to use that example because that's something Allah's causing to happen in the future. So of course Allah would know that. And there are other verses where, let's say Surah 15, verse 14, verses 14 to 15, where Allah says, even if we open to them a gate from heaven and they continued therein to ascend, they would say, our eyes have only been dazzled, rather we are a people affected by magic. So that seems to me to be an event. It seems to be predictive, right? In the sense that Allah is saying, hey, if this thing happened, they would say this. So Allah seems to know what they're going to say. But the reason I chose the verse that I chose specifically is because this is predicted a future event, and it doesn't seem like a what if scenario. It seems more definitive. It seems that this day, Judgment Day, will come, and when it comes, that's the day their faces will be turned about in the fire. And it says they will say, how we wish we had obeyed Allah and obeyed the messenger. So in this verse, I guess my question here firstly is, would this verse not be an example of Allah predicting, or I don't want to say predicting, would this not be an example of Allah knowing a future event and telling us what will happen, for example, on the Day of Judgment? And then we could probably address that first, and then I just have one more follow-up question, as long as you don't mind and you have the time.
Sure, brother, you don't mind, because you mentioned several verses and I want to give justice to each one rather than go over them quickly. Whether we will have time to cover all of them, that's a different story. But because I take the words of Allah very carefully. Al-Ahzab, I think you referred to 33:66, يوم تقلب وجوههم في النار. يقولون يا ليتنا أطعنا الله وأطعنا الرسول. If I may translate it loosely, and when their faces are flipped or turning in nar, okay, in nar, they declare, we wish we have obeyed Allah and obeyed the Rasul. How would that imply that there is what conclusion can you make from this? I'm missing your conclusion.
No problem. I guess that my conclusion from this is that Allah is telling us a future event that would happen in this verse. It seems to me that Allah is telling us an event that will take place in the future, and I don't believe that Allah could tell us an event that's going to happen in the future without knowing the future. Otherwise,
very good point, brother. Thank you. Yeah,
no problem.
No. This is very, very interesting what you just brought. Allah, Allah is talking about the hereafter hasn't happened yet, right? They haven't. Okay. Now, is Allah talking about an example? They will say so and so, and they wish they would have said so and so or not. I really don't know. Is he showing us an example? Because otherwise you would say, you know, you planned everything.
Right.
So what's the point? So I really have to look at this very carefully, because it seems that it's an example that Allah is giving here. And they declared, our Lord, we have followed our masters and وكبراءنا, the elitist, فأضلون السبيل. Okay, so I don't think that Allah is talking about a scenario that has happened or will happen. Allah is showing an example of how such people will disconnect from those that could have put them astray. I don't know, but this is my understanding. So I really don't, so there's no specifics to this. Okay, yeah. This verse, I'm looking at, it will take me, but I'm looking at the ones preceded it, because Allah talks about the kafirin, a generic. Allah is not talking about a specific people, and he's saying that those who are in this category, they will be dealt with in a certain way, and they will question what has brought them to this situation. But you had another verse that you wanted to talk about, right?
Yeah, just I had more of another follow-up question as such.
Sure,
I think your answer to that verse, was definitely understandable from my perspective, and I also appreciate your intellectual excuse me, I appreciate your intellectual honesty. I think that, myself included, it's always important for all of us, myself included, to if there's ever something we're uncertain about or something that we feel we need to ponder more, it's always important to, I think, accept that, rather than jumping to a conclusion that could be incorrect. And so I respect that a lot. Right here, I guess that it seemed to me that I went through a whole process on this call listening to your presentation, and throughout it, it really got my gears turning. It really got me thinking and pondering. And it seemed to me like a lot of the verses I was looking at throughout the presentation, they seem to hinge on whether it's predictive or whether it's knowledge that Allah has in this case. Does he know things, or is he predicting things? And so, to be honest, I had to go look up the more concrete definitions to see what is the distinction between knowing something and predicting something, between knowing something will happen and predicting something will happen. And so, at least according to Oxford Dictionary, it's just the source I chose online in this case. And I also understand that Arabic definitions can differ from the definitions in English. So I'm not saying this is necessarily correct. I could be wrong. But to predict something, the definition in English is to say or estimate that a specified thing in the future will be a consequence of something. So to predict is ultimately to estimate that something's going to happen in the future, whereas that's distinguished from knowing something will happen in the future, because to know, the definition of know, is to be aware of through observation, inquiry, or information. So I guess that it seems to me that the distinguishing factor between those two definitions is that in one of them, you are able to know something or be aware that something will happen in the future through observation, inquiry, or information. And on the other hand, if you're predicting, you're just estimating. So then the questions that I got from that was, does Allah know or does Allah predict? Does Allah estimate that something will happen, or is Allah aware that something will happen through observation? And that brought my mind to Surah 6, verse 59. In Surah 6, verse 59, Allah says, and with him are the keys of the unseen, all that is hidden. None knows them but he, and he knows whatever there is or on the earth and in the sea, and not a leaf falls, but he knows it. There is not a grain in the darkness of the earth, nor anything fresh or dry, but it's written in a clear record. And so this verse tells us that Allah is aware of everything on earth or in the sea, even leaves falling from trees or plant life. And the word used here for knows in Arabic is ya lam yuha. And I may be mispronouncing that. If my pronunciation is bad, I'm so sorry, especially to any Arabic speakers that may be listening. So I see verses like this where Allah seems to be aware of things that's happening, right? This verse, Surah 6, verse 59, seems to give a clear example that Allah is aware of things that are happening, and he's aware of the leaves falling, he's aware of anything on the earth, he's aware of what's in the sea, he's aware of the unseen. It seems to me that he knows that these things are happening through his awareness, not through estimating or any uncertain means. And so I looked up the definition of estimate just to be sure here, and to estimate is to roughly calculate or judge the value, number, or quantity of something. And so it doesn't seem to me that Allah estimates, and estimation is part of prediction. And so considering this verse where Allah seems to be aware of things through knowing them happening and observation, having the correct information, I would say that Allah knows things. But again, I could be wrong. And so my question following this is, considering all of this, is there a reason to think Allah predicts the future rather than knows the future?
Sure. Brother, this is a very good verse that I'm very glad you pointed to this verse. There are several things. One of the things that we are discussing is whether Allah has knowledge of what will happen or not. We can call it prediction, we can call it so this is one thing, to know the future, to predict the future, to tell the future, to yatanabba in the future. That's one thing. The other thing is to be aware of what is present now. So these are two separate things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's number one. The second, notice that I'm glad you referred us to this verse. Allah didn't say يعلم الغيب here, at least in this verse. عنده مفاتح الغيب. He has the keys to the ghaib, the one that is the unseen. Ghaib is unseen. Okay, so if you look very carefully at this verse, it's not that I'm trying to prove a point here. Please don't get that impression. But and I tell my friends, and I told Brother Hamza recently, if you find something wrong in what I say, make sure you call me first. So here I don't find any reference to the future.
Yeah,
you know,
it's a fair criticism.
The time concept is a big, deep concept. Nothing happens without time. Now, we want to be lofty sometimes, we want to be holier than the rest, and we want to be and say Allah is, time is not relevant to him. Well, why did he create the heavens and the earth in 6 days? Why did he, time is essential, time is a factor. When Allah says ana al-awwal wa ana al-akhir, that doesn't mean that there's nothing between them. There's a timeline. I mean, he said it, al-awwal wal-akhir. Okay, there's a timeline, right? And if we look at the hereafter, there's life in the hereafter. There's a progression. It's not that things will stop. There's no time. So again, but referring to this one, again, I don't see any negation of the thought that Allah doesn't know the future. I don't want to repeat this. Forgive me. Allah. It sounds demeaning and sounds blasphemous. No, Allah has the ilm that He can tell us what is is going to happen a year from now. Now, that's my conclusion. That's all.
Would that be using the term takdir?
Qaddara is different. You know, taqdir is proportion. It has to do from qadar, proportionality. You know, and that is related, from my understanding, to the creation. You know, he proportioned things. Because if we look at qaddara, all of this in the Mus'haf, it gives us, it directs us to that dimension. Now, you know, this is, I know, Brother Hamza, this is not a group of philosophers who try to just waste their time, you know, on a Sunday evening to discuss. No, I don't look at it this way. I'm an engineer through and through, which means that I like to be selfish enough in my life to use my time wisely to better my life and those who are around them. That's the core. That's the core. That's in my mind. That's in my mind. Not to prove anything philosophically. The concept of time is so powerful in the Mus'haf. Okay. Now, the biggest problem with what this concept is that the concept of Allah's knowledge, always, whenever you talk to people and they believe in predestiny, they say, but wait a minute, are you telling me Allah doesn't know the future? Oh my God, they derail the whole discourse. They derail it. Please, whether he knows it or not, we can discuss it separately. And it's not a blasphemous discussion. It's not. Okay. But the biggest threat is to conflate this and to juxtapose or impose non-Mushafic concepts indirectly on the concept of predestination, because that's what's at stake. You know, that is, you know what, we believe in the Mus'haf. Okay, it's our choice, okay, whether we want to believe it or not. So whether we leave this discussion and 50% of us believe that Allah knows the future and 50% don't, what's going to change? Not much, right? Not much. Will it dimension? Will it take away from the faith of those who, either way, the first 50% or the other 50%? It won't. But the implication is on predestination. That's my experience with Muslims. That is a very, very serious implication, extremely serious. It's a matter of life or death. It's a matter of living a life of misery, versus getting up and making a positive change.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Anybody else?
Omar, just one more thing. I just want to add on to something that that Bill said about the word no, and I agree with what he what he presented in the from the dictionary, our dictionary, because I have that as well in my stuff here. But it goes a little bit deeper too, that word no, because it means in the DOQ that we use, that dictionary, that the word alama not only means to mark, assign, but it also means to know. Alama means to know. And it says to perceive or understand as fact or truth, and to apprehend clearly and with certainty. And knowledge becomes, it says, to be acquainted with the facts, truths, or principles as from study or investigation, a fact or state of knowing. So this is how I always perceived Allah to be, that he always has the facts. He's called El Haq. He always, and the word Haq in the dictionary also means the truth and the facts of something. So he always has the facts. He always has the truth. So for him not to know anything about anything at any time, anywhere in his entire creation, I can't quite grasp that. So when I heard the word predict, which as Bill pointed out with the word estimation, that does carry some element of, well, I could be right or could be wrong, which was also my pet peeve about the phrase, my understanding, which is I could be right or I could be wrong. So that is a predictive statement. So I just want to add that little piece to say that for me, the word predict in any form would be contrary to how Allah presents in the Quran. So thank you, Omar.
Brother Tariq, I mean, I just want to leave you and Brother Sweeney, is that reflect please more on verse 48, Surah 48, verse 18, Surah 48, verse 27.
Wait,
Reflect
48,
on them.
48, 18?
Yeah, and 48, 27, when Allah says, فَعَلِمَ. Just ponder upon them. It's not a matter of I want to hear from you now or you want to hear from me at this moment, but think about these are two verses that are really, really powerful. Okay, فَعَلِمَ. Whether alima means to understood or to know, it's a process. There's a time sequence. There's a timeline. Okay, Allah didn't say, I was aware of what was in their minds. He said, فَعَلِمَ. Okay, he didn't say in the story of al-malaika, مَا تُبْدُونَ وَمَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْتُمُونَ. He said it, فَعَلِمَ. There's a cause, effect, and that is the principle of causality is core in our religion, is core. Otherwise, it's a
Causality will be a different topic now. But you said 48, 18, and what?
It is, yeah, but I know, but this is, we're talking about causality here in that Allah got
48, 18, and what else?
48, 18. Yes. 48,
and the other verse?
27.
Thank you. Okay, I'll look at that. Thank you, Omar.
Sure.
May I ask a question here, Dr. Omar?
Please, brother.
If we look at 65:12 in the Quran, the last statement. Well, we can read both. It says that, we'll read the whole verse. It says, Allah is he who created the seven heavens and the earth, the like thereof. The command descends among them, that you may know that Allah is possessor of power over all things, and that Allah encompasses all things in his knowledge. To know fact, like the brother was saying. So I'm kind of like, when you use the word prediction, I'm kind of like, that kind of took me off, because I always believed, and I still believe, that when you're talking about Allah and his knowledge compared to us in our knowledge, we're looking at two certain things. Allah has created everything with his knowledge of knowing. We, on the other hand, when he points us to his signs, we have to do a degree of intense research, comparison, and then at the same time, we still may have a fault in our understanding. And I truly believe that this is why Allah says, in the end, I will tell you where you differ. You see, and what I'm trying to say in terms of just looking at it, like you said, from a mental process, it's like almost like a comparison of us with Allah, you know, in his complete knowledge. Kuli Shayin, he encompasses all things. That's everything, every aspect of creation. And the things you're speaking about are aspects of our creation. The way we look at and predict things, because as our evolution continues, we acquire more knowledge of things where Allah already possesses this knowledge. So on our end is the prediction, you see, or I shouldn't say guesswork, but based on what we have assumed so far, this is where our knowledge takes us. But on Allah's hands, he has the absolute fact of all things. So I'm kind of...
Sure. If I may, you know, referring to the verse that you mentioned, Allah الذي خلق سبع سماوات ومن الأرض مثلهن يتنزل الأمر بينهن لتعلموا أن الله على كل شيء قدير وأن الله, the key phrase I think that is relevant over this, وأن الله قد أحاط بكل شيء علما. And Allah's ilm, the way I look at it, is encompassing everything.
Right.
And that's perfectly, that's no denial of that. I mean, that's, he knows all the laws, whether the laws he created them, kalimatullah, we don't know, but he is in firm control of all the laws, and that's why يسير السحاب, he controls the sahab, the clouds. He does not say to the sahab, just do what I want and it will happen. He knows the laws to control the sahab. I mean, right now people know how to make some sahab bring rain, or they're trying. So we're still in our infancy in reaching his awareness, but this verse talks about his awareness. وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ أَحَاطَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عِلْمًا. It really doesn't, no one is denying. I'm not denying the power of Allah. I'm not denying that Allah has means that we have yet to achieve. Are we getting close to him? I think we are. We are getting close to him, but it's still far, far away. I just want to mention something, and I hope it's relevant. We have reached a certain level of maturity in certain sciences, but maybe these levels of maturity are they pale in comparison what to Sulaiman had. Sulaiman had the ability, and he said, Allah, you gave me this ilm to decipher what the ant, the language of the ants. Wow, that's amazing, right? Right now we cannot decipher what the ants are saying. We can decipher what the ants do. There's something called some genetic algorithms that look at how the ants walk. That's the best we can do. But do we understand their language? We don't. So Allah gave Sulaiman some ilm. Allah gave Sulaiman some ilm. Does that go back into that verse that Brother Sweeney mentioned, is that he gives ilm illa bima sha? Am I right, Brother Sweeney? I think you mentioned this Ayat al-Kursi, or Brother Tariq, it doesn't matter. So this does not contradict, I mean, I just want us to be precise. That's all. We want to know, I want to know how Allah operates. Frankly, I do want to know how Allah operates, so I don't waste my time. When Allah says, I'm very close to you than the jugular veins. So what? Why do I want him to be so close to me? It means there's a reason. It means there's a reason. I mean, we want a better life, we want a better future, we want a better everything, and to go beyond what Allah is telling us. Of course, I'm not telling you that I'm the correct person and you're wrong, but these verses do not negate that there is cause effect, and Allah سيعلم, he will whether understand or know something based on a cause. Okay, it is not typical way to look at things, but again, it makes us think.
Excuse me, is there somebody else?
John.
Excuse me,
John.
John? John, are you there? John? I think John, brother John has a question.
Salamun Alaykum, Hamza.
Walaikum salam, John. Go ahead with your question. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you. So I had a question about chapter 57, 22 and 23. So I was just wondering if either you, Hamza, or Dr. Omar could help me out with this chapter and understanding. So it's chapter 57, 22 and 23. Anything that happens on earth or to you has already been recorded, even before the creation. This is easy for God to do. Thus, you should not grieve over anything you missed, nor be proud of anything he has bestowed upon you. God does not love those who are boastful, proud. I was just wondering if Dr. Omar could, tell me his understanding on this chapter. And I also had a question about chapter 12 with interpreting dreams, because from what I understand from that chapter, the interpretation of dreams that is Yusuf, where he has the two young men that are in prison with him, explain his dreams to Yusuf, and he interpretates them onto what will happen. One will be the king's butler, and the other one would die. And also the king asks him about his dreams, and he tells him, the king, about the dreams. So God gives him the gift of interpreting the dreams, and also tells him the future of those dreams in chapter 12. So I guess the first one would be chapter 57, 22 and 23 paragraphs, because I would really like to know what Omar has to say about those.
Sure.
chapters.
Sure, brother John. Sorry, time is up. We have to finish now. Sorry, brother. Your request just came too late.
Really appreciate you. This is a fascinating topic that you have me thinking. But if we're to leave this discussion thinking that God is not precise in the future, then to me, then he would not be a God.
Yeah, you see, brother, this is one of the most critical verses in the entire Mus'haf that you referred to, without exaggeration. ما أصاب من مصيبة في الأرض. I'm always grounded by reality, always grounded by reality. I don't want to personalize things, but in my family, there was a very unfortunate thing that happened long time ago. And till this day, my mother cannot exonerate herself. She said, I'm responsible for this till this day, okay? And sometimes people tell her, look at this verse. You're not the one to blame. It was meant to be, okay? So it made me reflect too deep, and I will share few thoughts, and I hope that Brother Hamza will organize something in the future just to address this very important concept of whether our calamities were meant to be, we just should shut up and take it, or not, okay? For now, it made me really reflect, what is the musiba? Okay, musiba. Is it a calamity, or is it the mechanism of a calamity? Don't want to over philosophize things, but the reality grounds me, because the unfortunate thing that happened back in my family was mere negligence. mere negligence. If you, brother John, if you don't make sure that the handbrake is on when you put your car, park it properly, it's gonna go down the road and kill someone. Okay, did Allah write this in a book 50,000 years ago or a million years ago? It doesn't click. It doesn't, because this understanding is a recipe for carelessness, for absolute carelessness. On the contrary, it makes us, on the opposite side, the flip side, it makes us very conscious and lead a better society where we're responsible for everything we do. Okay, now that's why I think that there's much more to this verse than just to juxtapose it on these scenarios that we try to seduce ourselves. We try to comfort ourselves, to exonerate ourselves from the responsibility. Yes, it could be painful. It could be extremely painful for, let's say, for a mother to lose a child. And come on, can it be more painful than that? For a mother to lose a child. But there is a lesson that we should be careful so that it doesn't happen again and to other people. So I don't know what I have to go back and look at musiba. You know, what is the musiba? Is it the mechanism? You know, is it the mechanism of a disaster, the mechanism of a calamity, or is it that particular calamity? I don't know. I have to look very carefully on it. And many people have thought about this, and I like to share some thoughts, but not now. Maybe at another time. Please don't think that I'm copying out. This is a very, very important topic, very, very critical, because it's being used both ways. It's being used by the brutal leaders to make us shut up and accept whatever comes down, you know, from them. And at the same time, it's used by people who want to exonerate themselves from responsibility, you know. So I beg your forgiveness, and inshallah we will. But this touches more, you know, on the predestination concept, and notice that it was in a book, illa fi kitab, you know, illa fi kitab. Does it click that Allah wrote that, you know, that for me to have this kind of experience and for someone else to have a different experience? I don't think Allah works that way. Anyways, but we'll discuss it some other time, inshallah.
So if I have another question, chapter 12, you touched on it a little bit with Joseph, the wording from there. So that particular chapter is very interesting to me because it's one of the only chapters in the Quran from beginning to end tells a story of the events and the things that happened in Joseph's life. So, but one of the gifts that God has given Joseph over there is the interpretation of the dreams, and he encounters his dream at the very beginning and explains the dream to his father. And his father says, you know, don't tell your brothers about this dream. And also when he's actually put into jail, the two young men come and explain their dreams to Joseph, and Joseph interprets the dreams to them, which will happen in the future. And also the king has a dream and wants to know the meaning of the dream, and Joseph interprets the dreams of 7 years, you'll have this drought, you'll have this. So I guess what I'm trying to explain, not only God knows the future, but he gives the interpretation of the dreams to Joseph, and he's able to explain and tell the future through the dreams, from my understanding, from chapter 12. And naturally, there are stuff that happened to me, to my wife with our dreams that we did see, and the dreams did come true. So whatever you want to call it, but naturally we could only talk about it from the Quran. And so from what I'm understanding from chapter 12 is not only God knows the future, what's going to happen, but he actually lets one of his servants know about dreams and he gives the thing.
Yes, brother. Thank you so much. I fully believe in what you said. I believe that there are two things. I want to parse things. In the story, let's start with the story of Yusuf. The story of Yusuf, Allah, let's put it, predict or knows for now. He has a vision, or he has he knows what's going to happen. Let's put it loosely this way. Okay, that's one thing. That's one thing. And how, in my opinion, I go back to the ilm that he knows the climate, he knows the soil temperature, he knows the wind and all of that, and he can, let's put it again loosely, predict what will happen in the coming 7 years. That's one thing. The other thing is, as you put it, and I agree with you, mafatih al-ghayb. Does he share these things with certain people?
Oh.
I firmly believe he does.
Right.
I firmly believe he does. I mean, we cannot deny so many facts and stories, and people, they dream of something and next day they see it. And that's why this takes us to how Allah intervenes. And I think Allah intervenes through the brain. That's where I find Allah intervening in our life. He shows us something, he shares something with us, and that's perfectly, I don't see any contradiction in the Mus'haf. And in fact, not just contradiction, but Surah Yusuf affirms that's a possibility, and there are good people, not just Yusuf. There are good people that Allah, I think that Allah shares these things with good people. I cannot prove it, but I think that Allah doesn't enter the mind of a dirty person. We say in the Middle East, where I grew up, I used to ask these questions, like I traveled in the East, in North Asia, and these things happen to good people.
Sure.
They don't happen to wicked people. Again, there are many stories, and I have no way to deny them, because the credibility of those who said these stories is intact. Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, but anyways, in summary, these are two separate things, and we have a history, Muslims traditionally, to conflate all of these: predestination, prediction, Allah's knowledge, all of this, mafatih al-ghayb, together. And I think the more we classify, the more we separate them, I think, and I hope, the better understanding we may achieve.
And your explanation was beautiful, scientifically, what you explained, and I appreciate you for this. But some of the stuff, there's not a scientific proof, like what we just spoke about with the dreams, and so
I'm in the field of science, and what we know in science is so little. We live in an age of, there's so much arrogance. Yesterday I was reflecting, I said, wow, Sulaiman deciphered what the ant said. Wow. I mean, nowadays they'll think you're crazy. This is way beyond us. So there's so much arrogance in today's world that the first calamity, the first casualty was humility. And when people lose humility, they stop seeing things. They stop really seeing. Sihr and other things and whatnot. I mean, we don't know everything. We don't know everything, right? I mean, Allah says in the Quran, يُعَلِّمُونَ النَّاسَ السِّحْرَ. They used to teach people. So I don't miss dismiss these witchcraft things that some people talk about it. We don't know all the details, but we cannot dismiss it, you know. But I want to emphasize something is that the cleaner the person is, the closer that Allah will allow him to get to him.
I agree. I agree.
Mhm.
And thank you for your explanation.
Okay, brother Omar, if we've taxed you for so much of your time and we're just enjoying this conversation, we could go on and on, but we don't want to overtax your time. Brother Billy has another question. If you want to take that, we'll let that be the last question for today discussion. If you feel to take that question from brother Billy.
Make it easy, brother.
Absolutely. Honestly, it's I just wanted to kind of touch on a few points that you made, more so than kind of engaging in a deeper questioning as we were earlier. Firstly, you know, I really appreciate your intellectual honesty and how I can see that you distinguish when you question. You're very precise, and I think that's good. The verse I provided earlier, for example, Surah 6 verse 59, I think that it does demonstrate that Allah knows things through observation or has awareness, but you're absolutely right that it's not in reference to a future event, it's in reference to something happening presently. So I just wanted to purely I have no argument to that. I just wanted to say that I accept that and I appreciate the precision in your response there. There was a few things we touched on here that were kind of more, for lack of a better term, almost more anecdotal, right? Like us discussing personal experiences with dreams and stuff. I'd love to discuss that more, honestly. If any of the brothers on this call are up for that and having a discussion on those kind of topics and maybe personal experiences, I think that would be great because this has been a fantastic discussion. But I think that one of your points actually can be, even though, say, for example, talking about dreams and signs from Allah in our personal lives, maybe through personal experience, I think one of those points can be backed up Quranically. You said repeatedly, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brother Omar here, that you firmly believe that the more clean a person is, the closer they're able to get to Allah. I actually think Surah 56 verse 79 backs this up, in which it's talking about the book, and it says specifically, none shall touch it or none can grasp it but those that are purified, the purified ones. And so I've always seen that verse as a reference to a concept, and it seems to me that the concept being expressed there is that the more pure you are, the more of this you're able to grasp, which I think is fantastic. And that kind of brings me to something you said earlier in the call. We've been talking about getting closer to God, and something that struck me on this call was that if Allah is omnipotent, and omnipresent, and as the Quran says, there's nowhere we can turn except that we face Allah's presence, and he's closer to us than our jugular vein. If all of these verses are true, it would logically follow that you can't get closer to God physically. It can't be a physical process. It has to be a non-physical process, or a process that transcends the physical aspects of reality and maybe moves into non-physical or metaphysical aspects such as thought, understanding, feelings, emotions, what's sometimes referred to in philosophy as abstract objects, or the abstract realm. And I found that interesting. I think that's something worth discussing maybe more in the future if the group's up for it. I think that's a very interesting topic. You know, how do we get closer to Allah according to Allah? What does he say about how we get closer to him? I think that'd be a great topic to cover. And yeah, it's a fantastic discussion. I just wanted to bring it up and also say Salamun Alaykum to Brother John. It's my first time meeting you, brother, and you raised some great points as well. It's a fantastic discussion, and I really enjoyed it. It's also really, really nice to meet everybody, yourself included, Brother Omar. It's been a pleasure. I hope we can do this again more times in future. It's great.
Thank you. The discussion is enriched by the people who are present in it, really. And I had been my practical goal personally, is that I think that Allah talks to us or communicates with us with things that we can comprehend. Rahim, Rahma, Alim, Ilm, all of these things, and I think it's, it is essential. I mean, some of us, of course, I mean, we're not preaching to anyone who's not interested in. I mean, there's some people who are not interested in light, but there's a lot at stake. If I want to just finish with this, Brother Hamza, there's a lot at stake. What is at stake? What at stake is that when we die, we don't start with a clean slate, all of us. No. Allah says, whoever is blinded in this world will be blinded in the hereafter. So there's a continuity. This continuity is so empowering. Even if I have 2 days left in this world, there's a continuity. Imagine, there's a continuity. That should make you cheer up, right? There's a continuity. There's no fana, done, boom, finito. Which means that our consciousness, our guidance, all of this will follow through. And whoever chose to be, live a hedonistic life, it's gonna follow through. There's a beautiful continuity. There's a slope. There's no discontinuity. So that's why for the selfish people like us, all of us in a good way, we're selfish in a good way. We want our salvation. Brother Hamza said it earlier, selfishness, right? You care about yourself. What is salvation? You want to salvage, yourself. These are important issues. They're not philosophical. I don't see them as philosophical. I don't, absolutely not. And then at the end of the day, we remind ourselves, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah will not tax us beyond our capacity. Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother.
Let me just add before we sign off. Also, we might want to consider the verse, the Quran, chapter 49, verse 51. 49:51, and Quran chapter 91, starting at verse 8, where Allah tells us how He communicates with humanity, how He communicates, how He gives words to humanity, and there's 3 different basic methods in which He used. We might want to look at that going forward, because everyone Allah communicates with on a day-to-day basis in one way or the other. And so we might want to consider that, and then we can kind of know how to get closer to Allah via that route as well. Again, we want to thank Brother Omar for your time, for this very, very good and intellectual and should I say wholesome and fulfilling discussion. We're going to review it. This video will be broadcast publicly. We're going to go back over it again and again. And hopefully, inshallah, we're going to look forward to Brother Omar being a part of our discussion whenever he feels to come on and share with us. Because what we're looking for is information, knowledge, truth, things that will get us closer to Allah. We don't care who the presenter is. It's what's presented is what we want to be concerned with, and that is basically the truth as it is pulled from the Musaf. So again, Brother Omar, thank you for your time. Thank you all the brothers and sisters who joined us on this stream today on this Zoom, and we look forward to doing it again shortly. We'll notify everybody, notify your friends to come on with us in the future. Hopefully we can get some other good brothers who have information from the Quran that they would want to come on and share. We also would want to invite those who are in opposition to the position that we, basically the people on this Zoom today, hold, and that is that we only adhere to the Quran as the source of Hudan, guidance for us as humans. So anybody who has something that they want to share, come on and suggest to us that no, it's not just the Quran, it's the Quran and some other source, we invite them to come on in a proper and respectful manner, and we will hear them out and we will engage with them. So don't shy away, come on and share with us your thoughts as well. So without any further ado, I say again, salam to everybody. Thank you very much for coming on. And Brother Omar, be well, stay well. All of you brothers and sisters out there, stay well. Salamun Alaykum.
Assalamu
Give us a
alaikum.
lamb, Hamza.
Alaikum salam.
What's up, everybody?